All yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be talking about navigating CMMC for cybersecurity professionals with the caveat that the approach is coming from someone with no federal government experience and excuse the inherent ignorance. But this was a great session of talks, and a lot of it is going to be reiterated communications from the previous speakers. Um, so who's the talk for? Cybersecurity professionals not currently working in federal government or cybersecurity pros just starting out in the federal government space. GRC, risk compliance practitioners seeking to expand into the CMMC ecosystem. Aspiring cybersecurity professionals aiming to enter a high demand regulated career path. Individuals looking for stable and growing opportunities in cybersecurity related to federal supply chain security. So my perspective frame from my experience, right? I have 20 years of experience in cybersecurity across highly regulated industries. My background is really in frameworks like NIST-CSF, 853, which people have talked about earlier, risk quantification, governance, board level reporting. While never working directly in federal government, my expertise extends deeply into compliance and AI governance. My key approach to CMMC has been to treat it like any other regulatory framework, mapping its requirements to familiar standards and controls I already understand. This perspective helps demystify CMMC and enables a pragmatic, confident approach to its implementation. So why it matters now, and I think we've been hearing that all day today, right? So tightening Department of Defense, Department of War, supply chain enforcement. So DoD is increasing enforcement of cybersecurity requirements across the supply chain to protect sensitive information, national security interests, with strict penalties for noncompliance. And I think November 2026 is going to be here before we know it, right? So from our rollout timeline, CMMC implementation schedule for full rollout in November, require contractors to meet defined maturity levels to maintain or attain DoD contracts. Wide impact on industries. People think that it's strictly catered or siloed to federal government, but that's not the case. Beyond traditional defense contractors, CMMC affects healthcare technology vendors, SaaS providers, MSP, MSSPs, universities, research organizations that handle controlled unclassified information. So everyone kind of has skin in the game, even though they might not realize it. So what is the cybersecurity model certification? I'm going to kind of brief through this one because I think we all heard what that is, right? Two key categories: federal contract information, FCI, um, controlled unclassified information, COI, basically safeguarding those, right? From a security perspective, from a governance perspective, from an operational perspective. That's what CMMC is all about. The structure, I think, once again, kind of reiterating on some of the previous speakers' points, right? Level one, level two is kind of what everyone's kind of been focused on. So not gonna go down the rabbit hole on these because I think you all got a lot of information already on these. Big one is controls based on this 800 171 to protect that control unclassified information. Level includes unrestrained controls. John made a great point that if you're looking at this 853 in the control catalog there, I mean you're looking at a way bigger surface attack space when it comes to your control environment. So, from that perspective, it's really interested that people still have a lot of challenges with a defined set of controls that's definitely less than the entire control matrix, right? So, but more and more ownership and more, inertia to get that information ticked and tied, I's dotted, T's crossed for your level two assurances. Some of the biggest
Hey, hang on.
misconceptions.
I'm gonna cut you. I'm just jumping in for 1 second. I'm just
Yes.
seeing your opening slide. I'm not advancing the slides. Did you? I just want to make sure we're aligning with what you're talking about with what we should be
Oh,
seeing.
okay. Can you advance the slides for me? Because
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were
um,
just on the cover slide, and now we're gonna go to slide one. So who's
yeah,
this talk for?
yeah. No,
So just
I'm already. Keep on going. See, that's
okay.
that's what
Just
I
I want
do.
to just get. That's what I was saying. I was like, we're loving hearing everything you're saying, but I was like,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that
Um.
we're aligning, and that's why
Okay.
I jumped in.
Yeah.
So why
So.
CMC matters right now? Just yeah, if you just
Yeah.
want to go ahead and just give us a brief overview, and we'll move quickly, and just tell me when
Okay.
to move the slide.
Sorry about that. Well, I think I mentioned this, right? It's really important because it's Department of Defense is increasing those requirements. It's increasing that onus on protecting that information, that sensitive information, and there's going to be strict penalties for noncompliance, right? From a rollout perspective, I think Ray mentioned it. The time is now. Don't wait till November. And even if you're doing it now, you might be out of luck come November. So it's really important to get everything done the right way, and it's going to impact different industries, right? Just not the federal government, because the federal government has tentacles into the corporate sector, into corporate America, into the private sector. So that's kind of what the high level overview on this slide is, Felipa. So if you can move on to the next one. Um, Basically, what it is, we talked about it, CUI, FCI, that information. So I think I covered this one, Felipa. We move on to the next one. So from a structure perspective, level one, level two, I think we all kind of talked about these at a high level already. So, thinking back, Felipa, maybe we should have had my talk at the beginning, because this is more like just a recap of what we've been talking about, just from a structural perspective of what CMC is, and what most of the folks on the call and our audiences are going to be looking at, right? Level one and level two. Next slide. The biggest misconceptions here, I think I mentioned it. People think that only applies to federal government contractors. It's primarily a federal compliance issue. Non-federal organizations are not impacted by CMC requirements, and CMC is just another government regulation to comply with locally. The reality of that is it's a critical supply chain risk management required, impacting hundreds of thousands of contractors and subcontractors. Many industries beyond federal contractors, like healthcare, technology, cloud security providers, research institutions, universities, have some sort of impact based on CMMC compliance through the DoD supply chain, right? So CMMC aims to protect sensitive information across the supply chain, not just government entities. Understanding CMMC as a supply chain risk helps organizations proactively manage cybersecurity risk, align with DoD expectations. So some of the challenges and organizations are actually struggling with, and we heard it, here in today's sessions. Organizations often miss-scope controlled unclassified information environments, causing compliance gaps. They struggle to interpret controls versus implementing them. Evidence collection demands are higher than SOC 2 or HIPAA, and we heard those earlier today. Um, Requiring verifiable proof, continuous monitoring remains a resource-intensive challenge, right? So I think, to my original question when we first had the panel, you're right. You do have to have human in the loop. You do have to have human interaction, human oversight, and governance around that, right? Some of the key struggle areas: scoping environments is complex, often inaccurate, leading to compliance gaps. Differentiating control interpretation from implementation causes confusion. Evidence collection demands detailed, verifiable proof beyond typical SOC 2 or HIPAA standards that some of us might be used to. Maintaining continuous monitoring requires ongoing effort and resourcing. Next slide. So some of the familiar concepts that are in disguise for those that are GRC native professionals that might not necessarily be in the federal space, right? Access control, incident response, audit and accountability, configuration management, CIS benchmarks, hardening, logging and monitoring, SIM, um, zero trust principles, service accounts, what's actually provisioning access to what, human identities, not human identities. So there's a lot of things happening here. And from a security perspective, it's really important to understand that. It's really important to understand that that security is wide encompassing, wide rolling, um, and everyone has to understand that there's concepts from GRC outside the federal environment, federal government space, that everyone needs to understand that and be cognizant of. Next slide. Some of the areas on the NIST cybersecurity framework and CMMC. So identifying your assets, right? It goes back to asset classification, asset verification, understand what you have, because if you don't understand what assets you have in your environment, you're not going to be able to understand and deduct what controlled, unclassified information elements you have, what sensitive information you have, restricted, confidential information, and then you use the frameworks to actually safeguard that through the encryption, through training, safeguarding, what have you, right? So going back to, you think of the CIS controls, the top 18, top 5, cyber hygiene, um, implement continuous monitoring, SIM, incident response, DFIR, right? All these things that we do on a day-to-day, they're here, right? They're important. They're in play. Everyone needs to understand that, because ultimately anything that's used to safeguard information is fair game, in my opinion, from someone that's not working in CMMC, that's not, in the space, getting that, accreditation, going through an accreditation, going through consultancy, going through an audit, is important for people to understand that everyone is, doing these sorts of things on a day to day. Next slide. So, I think we all talked about this. It's out of the ones that we kind of talked about at high level, SOC 2, HIPAA, CMMC has way more control depth. There's way more assessor verifiable artifacts, and not just tell me what you have, but show me what you can prove over time, continuous, like not just a point in time audit, something like a check the box, set it and forget it activity. Even though it might be seen as a check the box activity, it's understanding that you have to kind of enforce that oversight, enforce that compliance, not only at that point in time, but over time as you do your assessments, as there are material changes in the environment. And people need to understand that CMMC kind of harps on that, right? They really want to look at that level of rigor from a compliance perspective to differentiate themselves from others like SOC 2, HIPAA, as an example. Next slide. So the real skill gap, right, lies in control traceability, audit defensibility, not just tools for controls, right? Key challenge is mapping those controls to requirements and proving their effectiveness with verifiable evidence during audits beyond trust implementing tools or controls. Next slide. So the ecosystem, right? We talked about it, right? You have CMMC consultants advising those folks, those compliance strategies, preparing them for certifications. I think we talked about that earlier today, right? What's the difference between the consultant and the assessor, right? The conflict of interest, which I actually learned. I thought it would be more bang for the buck if everyone can kind of do the same thing, but that's not the case, right? From a GRC analyst, from a DoD perspective, an alignment, focusing on those particular compliance specific requirements that the DoD, Department of War, is looking for. That's going to give you way more granular targeted scoping from your assessment perspective. Obviously, you have compliance leads that are working internally to help ongoing compliance efforts within those organizations, ensuring those controls and policies are maintained. Why? Because Ray mentioned that they want to keep the contracts. They want to get business. They don't want to lose those contracts. They want to keep on doing business with the federal government, right? From a third-party accessor organization, C3PAO perspective, authorized entities that perform official CMMC assessments and certifications are part of it. John, just became an assessor himself, so he has, shared a lot of good insights into, what he's gonna look for, and then, kind of wrangle as he continues to do work within his firm. Security engineers, right? So the people that do the thing, the architects, those folks in house are going to help, implement those and maintain those standards required by CMMC. So everyone kind of has their lens, their viewpoint, but skin in the game. It's all important because at the end of the day, you want to keep the lights on, you want to keep being compliant, and keep those contracts going. Next slide. Cyber AB and ISACA. That's why I asked the question. So I think from the ecosystem perspective, from the individual certification perspective, John hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, this is just literally late breaking this past month. ISACA took ownership of the certification body to take the exams, take the examinations. So I just wanted to throw that slide in there to understand for those that are really interested to become certified and see CMMC as a assessor or a consultant, knowing that ISACA is kind of the governing body now associated with leading these certifications and for people to have awareness on. And I think we do now based on the back and forth that we had earlier, and then John kind of laid it out for us. So thank you. Next slide. So the registered practitioner, there's certified professional, certified assessor, going back to the previous slide. So there's a path, right? Processes to three key stages: the registered practitioner, the CCP, the CCA, right? I'm learning all these things, right? Because I'm not any of these, but I'm interested because I think there seems to be a need to understand that, eventually we might have to, be voluntold by organizations to get certified, right? Depending on what the need is, depending on what the situation is, we just don't know. So it's really important to have that knowledge, to have that awareness, transparency, and accountability to understand what needs to go on if you do want to be certified in this ecosystem. Next slide. So for those that want to get in and break in, right? If you have a GRC background, that's great. I think somebody mentioned you have that foundational knowledge. It might even be more beneficial coming in as an outsider. Having, I did research. It seems like if you understand this 853, if you understand GRC, you've been doing this for 5 years or more, you kind of have like 50 or 70% of the battle done, right? Do I agree with that? I'm not sure because I haven't, been in the fire, been in the weeds. But if you do have that head start from a scoping, from a coverage perspective, I think it's going to be a great start to understand what you need to do to help out, right? If you're technical in nature, if you know what it takes to, have that evidence collection skill in your toolbox, and if you're new to CMC, understanding there's a flagship framework and you know body of resources available that for you to scale up on and learn, like 800 171. Next slide. So some of the different things I'm seeing, right? So market demand and challenges. There's a lot of frictions. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of issues that I've been seeing back and forth, primarily on LinkedIn, with people that do this on a day to day. They have something, about phase rollout delaying, hiring adoption. I think Ray mentioned the whole situation on timing. People are not getting their assessment set up on time. They're not understanding that they need to do this now and not wait till November. Certification alone doesn't ensure engagement, doesn't ensure that you're going to be able to get that contract locked in at the end of the day. Or it's just part of it. So all these things are kind of working together to understand that there's market demand, but there's also challenges around that, right? So there's really important things at play here that people need to be cognizant of and aware of to deal with the ongoing challenges of CMMC certifications. Next slide. So some of the confusion, right? Things that are slowing down, bottlenecks, right? Limited assessor capacity. We talked about that earlier. Heavy dependencies on external assessors and those third-party assessor organizations, creating those bottlenecks just based on, availability, based on, somebody's trying to sell you the whole farm, charging you a lot of money. I think the range was $3,000 to $10,000. I mean, that's a huge difference, especially for small shops that don't have those, that resourcing, that available, money to get that done, right? So all these things are slowing down opportunities. They're slowing down challenges in regards to dealing with CMMC. So it's important for people to understand what things are out there and what things can be blockers for your organization. Next slide. So from our perspective, right, you have to kind of know how to break through from an advantage, right? So lead with capability, understanding the frameworks, leading what those controls are, having that information, having that subject matter expertise is going to help you, right? Shifting the focus from just thinking high level, evidence collection, configuration, logging and monitoring, having those things that you can speak to and understand what's happening is going to help you. It's going to be an advantage to deal with any other blockers that are outside our control, outside of our purview, is important. Next slide. So what we can do, right? Identifying all systems, applications, defining the clear boundaries, having that ownership, leadership buy-in to understand what it is that we're doing, everyone being on the same page. That's what you have to ask those questions. You have to challenge the status quo. You cannot assume anything in this space. At least that's what I'm doing and learning as I'm doing the research from having outside, um, you know, not being working in the federal space. I think if you have that, if you're making an impact day one, these are the first things you want to start doing to understand foundationally what you need to do to achieve CMMC compliance for your org. Next slide. Building a control crosswalk, right? I mean, if you don't have the enablement currently, you want to learn more, you can start doing control crosswalks now, right? You can start looking at 800, 171. You can start looking at 853. You can start looking at the crown jewels of the organization you're looking at or trying to get a job into or trying to break into, understanding that these things are there to streamline your audit, streamline your positioning, and not only being competitive to look for a job within those organizations, but also understand when you're in the door, instead of losing time and understanding what's impacting our organization, what we need to do, building those control crosswalks now you can do. You can actually operationalize that as a pet project, right? So those that are cyber practitioners, everyone thinks about setting up try hack me, hack the box, that sort of thing. GRC people can do the same thing, just in a different light. And this is kind of what I'm getting at, to understand, to be more efficient, to be more upskilled in governance, risk, and compliance control standards, and understand what they mean. So you can, once you have a foot in the door, you're in the room, you won't be caught deer in the headlights when people are talking about these things. So yeah. Next slide. Evidence first mindset, right? So It's not what you know, it's what you can prove, right? So understanding that CMMC is all about that, right? Understanding those verifiable artifacts rather than just narrative, policy, high level documentation. Um, Sometimes even emails, right? It might not be enough depending on what the situation is. So having some sort of actionable evidence first mindset from an artifact perspective, from a delivery perspective, is going to really be important when you're showing the proof in the pudding, when you're doing your audit, when you're being assessed, when you're going through that assessment, to reduce any gaps between policy and what's actually happening operationally, because there's a lot of stuff that can happen between something that's in a document and actually happening on the ground, right? I mean, not everyone reads policies, not everyone follows policies and procedures, so you have to make sure those are aligned, because if you don't, you're going to have issues, right? So this is what I mean by the evidence first mindsets and perspectives. Next slide. So simulating an assessment, right? Just like performing, any sort of internal assessment, you can do the same things here to help with your upskilling, help with your information, to understand more about CMMC, right? Proactive approach, rinse and repeat to understand the issues that are around that, allowing those prospective practitioners or people that are already in the field actually have a real simulated review of what they need to do, what they need to get done, especially if they can't dish out the money for a consultancy. So I'm thinking more level one, right? The self-assessment, the self-attestation perspective, to ensure that you're doing it right. Because if you're doing something that you think you're doing it right, it's self-assessment on your own, you might be missing the mark, right? So understanding that there's different things you can do to make sure you're doing the self-assessment, the internal mock assessments done the right way. There's different things you can do to help that, right? To ensure that smoother formal certification process. If it's a level one, now you're doing level two, you can still do this exercise, and it's going to help when the assessor comes, when you get audited, when you get assessed. And then if you have a consultant come in, they're going to make their life easier, because they're going to understand, run, this is my environment, this is what I have, show me where there's gaps, show me where there might be a potential issue. And you're literally just cutting down the time and the churn for them, and it's probably going to save you money at the end of the day. So it's a win-win. Next slide. So having familiarity, right? From GRC, we all know there's platforms in place, right? So think of ServiceNow, Snow, think of Archer, think of those cutting next gen tools like Drata, Vanta, right? All these players are getting to CMMC compliance and tell you they can help you aggregate, have a whole trust center on your control environment. Like I mentioned earlier in the question, right? In the panel, having, understanding and familiarity with these tools is going to help, right? It's not mandatory, because depending on where you're at, what shop you have, they might not have a tool, right? They might still rely on good old spreadsheets, and that's not ideal. But unfortunately, that happens more often than not, depending on, especially if they're small in nature, they don't have the resourcing to have a GRC platform in place. So understand that if you do have familiarity with these sorts of tools, it's going to help you, right? It's going to be seen as an enabler. It's going to be valuable. So understand, if you do have access to these tools, if you understand, or been in shops or been in organizations that use them, understand how they work, because you never know whether you can come in and help you in future assessments, future opportunities as you move in your career path. Next slide. And AI, right? So AI is changing the game, right? TMMC is probably not excluded from that. AI is going to help with gathering and organizing your evidence collection pieces, right? Your logs, your configurations, you're reducing that manual effort, right? Churning down the time that things need to get done. Hopefully that doesn't cost us our jobs, but everyone has different differentiating opinions on that, right? But it's important to leverage technology to the best of our abilities to help our, to make us more efficient, more effective, and preparing for those CMMC assessments as they happen, right? With that, it kind of downstreams to continuous control monitoring. AI is going to help that real-time surveillance of security controls, quickly detecting any deviations. So think of it like, cyber attackers, cyber operators look at any deviations of an IOC that changed, right, or TTP that changed for if you're using MITRE ATT&CK. This is kind of the same thing, but from a standard perspective, from a operational perspective. If there's something that change, material change, you want to reassess right away, because if you don't, you might miss the mark, and you were compliant, you think you're compliant, and by that change happening, you're not, you're out of compliance. So having that real-time continuous control monitoring, real-time deviation scoping of anything that's happening in your environment is really important to get in front of it, get ahead of it, and it's going to help you not only internally from a security perspective, but also from a compliance perspective. That's when compliance and security kind of meet halfway, and everyone's happy because they're compliant and they're not missing the mark on safeguarding information, being security centric and security savvy and security compliant. And then from a risk scoring automation, AI is going to change the game when it comes to analyzing the vast data sets to continuously assess those risk levels. I talked about risk. Risk is really critical, especially when it comes to leadership buy-in. Leadership is going to be asking for these things. They're going to be asking for KPIs, KRIs, KCIs, right? Actionable, provide dynamic insights for important decision making through the enablement of AI, right? So we need to understand what we're feeding into the machine to get the most actionable outputs that are going to be reflective of what's actually happening without giving it fluff, without lying about it. And AI is going to help us with that, right? But with AI, we talk about garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're feeding the AI all this information that's not incorrect, that's inaccurate, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have issues when you're showing these reports to leadership. That's not a perfect or a real life indication of what the risk environment is. So you have to really be cognizant of information from AI. It's only as good as the information that you give it. So it's really important to understand those nuances as you move forward in your environment and your journey in assessing CMMC. Next slide. Emerging risks, right? So emerging risks, AI is considered an emerging risk, right? AI security is here. I think next gen AI is probably going to be the next thing that everyone's going to be talking about here in the next 6 months to a year. So with that, how does that impact CMMC, right? So data leakage, right? Data exfil, more and more information is going to be out there for hackers and bad guys to try to get their hands on. So it's really important not to forget about those areas of protecting and safeguarding information aside from just focusing on keeping those contracts, keeping the business, because you don't want to give up that particular information at the expense of you losing your data and impacting your stakeholders, impacting those people you serve, because you're going to have a whole cluster of a problem if you have that, if you have that emerging risk come through into fruition, right? So gaps in governance, AI governance is going to be critical more than ever, right? Having those AI governance policies in place, understanding what those people in those organizations should use or not be doing when it comes to AI, right? Everyone says, are they using AI? I think the answer is yes now. Before, it's like, okay, maybe 8 out of 10 were using it. I think everyone's using it. If they're saying they're not, they're probably lying, or they just don't have any awareness of what needs to happen from a visibility perspective. So if they don't even know what they're using from an AI perspective, imagine the data that's being sent off into the ether when it should not be, because that's a privacy issue. I heard someone mention GDPR. They really have, they really harp on those privacy controls for PII, PHI information. So it's really important to kind of keep that level set perspective that the attackers are going to upskill with AI just as much as we are. We got to keep up. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Next slide. So from a GRC, going back to the GRC perspective, mapping to the NIST AI risk management framework. There's frameworks out there already. They're going to help with governance, mapping of controls, managing of controls, measuring those risk evaluations based on those associations that you do, that you set up as you're doing your control matrix, as you're doing your risk assessments, security risk assessments, as you're doing your threat modeling. Nobody's been talking about threat modeling today. It's important to understand that if you're going to get a project off the ground, the first thing you should do is do a threat model, right? Understanding what is particular to that particular project, to that particular environment, to deal with authorization, authentication, security, encryption, all those good things that we know that we need, understanding that they map eventually to risk management frameworks, to the control standards, AI risk management frameworks out there. There's things there. There's free resources already to understand what you need to do, right? So that's really, really important. So yeah, like you see in this slide, CMMC is about proving trust and defense supply chain, not just checking compliance boxes. True security comes from demonstrating continuous protections of sensitive information, reliable risk management, ensuring every link in the supply chain is resilient and accountable. Nobody talks about cyber resiliency. That's a real thing. More and more cyber resiliency officers are being hired. More and more cyber resiliency operators are working hand in hand with the assessors, with the audit teams, with the compliance teams. So resiliency is part of it. So CMMC just adds another dimension into having resiliency from a control perspective, from an operational perspective, from a tactical leadership, strategic perspective. It's all kind of playing in, right? So, and then when you have supply chains, they have third parties, end parties using AI downstream, cascading to other perspective entities that you don't even know about that might have a downstream impact to your data and organization, makes it that much important to understand you have clear visibility into all these things. Next slide.
I'm at the end.
Oh, I'm at the end. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of ran through that fast, but I think it was like a recap on everything that we covered today. Maybe there's some questions, Felipe. I'm not sure, but I definitely want to get, if the panelists are still around, get their opinion. Obviously, I'm probably preaching to the choir because remember, excuse the inherited ignorance for not being in the federal space, but I think it's not that much different from what I do on the corporate side in corporate America and Fortune 10 companies, right? So just a little different spin to the whole thing. And I see Frank's still on the call. So Frank, any thoughts?
Scary that CMMC is stricter than SOC 2, man.
Yeah, it's
Because
interesting, right?
yeah, I thought it would be less stringent, because
Yeah.
honestly, in DoD, I can tell you, DoD laughs at CMMC. We're like, this is nothing. You're lucky.
Mm,
And then you find out that the friggin' financial industry is less strict. It's like, what the hell? But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
the
mean,
one
yeah.
thing the
Mhm.
the one thing I would tell people coming from an 853, like, because I'm going to give you guys advice just based off of personal experience.
Yeah.
Try to disjoin yourself from the 853 kind of mindset because it is
Yeah.
so frustrating. Because when you look at 853, you're like, cool, we got families, then we got controls, then we got
Hmm.
control enhancements. This makes sense. And then you go to 800, like 171 Pro, and you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell were you thinking here? Like,
Yeah.
you get so frustrated because when you look at how 800 171 is laid out, they they do tie to the families. So the
Hmm.
NIST families kind of stay the same. And
Yeah.
then after that, it just goes haywire, bro.
That's
And
kind
it
of
is
that's kind of what I mentioned, the
so
crosswalk. But you're right. I mean, the
yeah,
crosswalk to a certain extent, quote unquote, like in quotation marks, or like, with a little disclaimer, a little asterisk, it's not. You're gonna be surprised when there's not enough information for you to feel comfortable. Like like you said, what the hell's going on here
yeah.
with this stuff?
Like
So,
and
yeah.
then and then and then they go, there's 800 there's 800 171 revision 2,
Hmm.
and then there's a new one, revision 3, but a lot of the CMMC requirements still go back to revision 2, but then they came out with a memo that ties it to revision 3. the
Oh
only
man.
the only dude yeah, the only
So,
advice I could give everybody is to just acknowledge that it is like chaotic and convoluted,
yes.
and we're hoping that they're going to take care of it, because ultimately for me, bro, just tie everything to 853. That's
Yeah.
all
I
you had
mean,
to do. You know what I
that's what
mean? Like, that's what you had to do,
I
but
think you
you
want to have
didn't.
a uniform standard. Everyone like a single source of truth. We all want that,
Yeah,
so I totally get it. I come from a financial background, but I totally get what you're saying because even in the financial world, we have something called the FFIC handbooks, right? So when there's something
yeah,
that we look at the FFIC and we think we're good, here comes a bulletin, right, or some sort of update, and everyone's just like they throw their hands up in the air because we're not meaning what the bulletin just states got updated, and we're back at square one. Like, what the hell? So I totally
yeah.
get it. This is more like a different flavor of that sort of situation there. But that I don't like the fact, like you mentioned. I mean, this is news to me that they're reverting back to a previous revision when it should be
Oh,
updated in
dude,
the new revision. I mean, that's
it
really
is.
interesting. So they need to clean up house there. I mean, in my opinion,
Oh my God,
personally.
no, dude, trust me, bro. And one of these days, I'll show you kind of what we're working on to kind of
Yeah.
bring it all together. But yeah,
Okay.
dude, I think if you're coming from if you're coming from outside the CMMC environment going into the CMMC environment,
Yeah.
just prepare yourself for like that kind of level of frustration, and know that you're not the only one. That
Of course.
there are so many of us that are looking at this and saying, like, you're the same entity, you're NIST. Like, these guys
Mm-hmm.
probably work across the hall from each other. We joke about that. And you couldn't get this right. And
And
just know
they're speaking
that,
different languages, right? I
no,
mean, I
that's the
seen that.
problem, bro. They're
Yeah,
not. Like, they're like speaking, it's the same control, but it doesn't follow the same like numbering structure. And you're just like, what the
yeah,
hell are we doing
yeah.
here? So just be prepared for everybody.
The
Just
interpretation is different,
I
right?
think
I mean,
everything that
yeah,
you said is hellaciously true, but a lot of your like, and again, the only advice I'll give people is just try to disjoin yourself and don't get as frustrated and don't lose so much time as I did trying to freaking make sense of it. Just acknowledge this doesn't make sense, but I'm
hmm,
gonna keep going anyway
yeah.
because I
Keep
have to.
on,
You know
keep
what
on
I mean?
pushing ahead.
That's
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with
yeah,
you. Yep,
yeah.
yep.
But yeah,
Yeah,
because
because at the end of the day,
it
you
is
gotta,
extreme.
you have to do what you have to do. I mean, we want to
Yep.
keep our jobs, we want to keep our paychecks going. So, I totally get
Yeah.
it. And I seen some people actually just like you said lose it, get a little bit distraught because they just want to make a difference, they want to make an impact, and they're not at that leadership level to make that sort of determination or make
Cool.
anything. So I'm with you. My recommendation, I learned that the hard way, right? I kind of been told to stay in my lane sometimes, right?
Mm.
Or quote unquote just you know you know foundationally been told, even though it hasn't been directly said, but it's kind of one of those things that's goes under the air for me to understand that. And because we want to take value, we want to take, we are passionate about what we do, but at the end of the day, you're right, Frank. I mean, if you know that this is too much above our pay grades, let's just put our heads down, work hard, and hopefully someone makes sense of it. Yeah.
Eventually, and we will. We'll get there. And like I said, I'll show you, bro. I'll show you how we're bringing it all together and making sense of it. But like ultimately, that's the one thing I'll tell you guys. If you're coming from a non CMMC going into CMMC, but you understand 53, don't don't like you'll see reminiscences of 53.
Hmm.
But the moment you try to like directly tie 53 mentality to 171, you'll start to lose it. So
Okay.
don't, and just acknowledge, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Just it's okay. I'm gonna keep going. There's still ODPs. There's still like you can see that it's. I don't know. I consider it the same as like Latinos. Like if you
Hmm.
go to Mexico,
Yeah.
the way they talk Spanish is like hell. If you go to, I'm from El Paso, and if I go to El
Yeah.
Paso and
I'm from
speak
Brownsville, so
Spanish,
Matamoros is right there. Juarez
hell
and very
yes,
different, brother. Yeah, very
yes,
different.
yes, right. It's totally different. So don't try to
I'm actually
like we can
I'm
communicate,
actually going to Matamoros
but
later on
then we
today.
make
So there you go. Yeah.
you know what I
So
mean? Like,
yeah,
and that's okay. Just acknowledge that that's how it's going to be. It's not going to make
correct.
total sense. I think everything you said was great. I just don't want people to be as frustrated as I was. Like
Hmm.
learn from my frustration that that it's not worth it, and just kind of like you said, move on, keep pushing, and there'll be help on the way hopefully soon.
Sounds good. Well, Felipa,
Yeah.
that's a great conversation with Frank. I don't know if there's any questions, but yeah, that kind of covers me from the outside perspective coming in, and then a little bit of a tidbit and a little bit of a spin on AI and how that can change, and help us out here as we move forward.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
love it.
think
And thank you so much for being part of it, and also, just like I said, sharing that perspective. As I have, set myself on a DIB kind of trajectory professionally, but I'm still kind of very new to the space, and so I'm so much to learn. And I learned a lot of even insights on what you were brought in, and especially just given your cybersecurity background and obviously your expertise. So that was very valuable to sort of add you to and be part of this conversation. So really appreciate all of you and being part of this today. And to all of our audience, thank you for being here. We appreciate you because you make all this possible as well and kind of bringing it together. And I know that, Saturdays are a little bit mixed because obviously a lot of the corporate people who want to sort of fold this into their job time versus kind of the free time that's on Saturday. So we have actually quite a few people who've registered who I know didn't join us live, but I
But the
know
good thing that it's recorded, people can come back and
exactly.
see
I will
them.
be sharing them, both the
And
replays as well as post-event resources, because I know we directed people to a lot of resources. So
yeah,
I like to kind of capture all
and
of that and
And I can,
just
and I think
appreciate.
John mentioned it, Philippa. Thank you so much for getting these things out there. I mean, we need more of this. Like I still feel siloed sometimes, and I'm out there. I'm doing speaking things. I'm talking at B sites. I just spoke at RSA, right, this a couple weeks ago on cyber threat intel. So I mean, the more we get out there, the more we show partnerships across lines from federal, private, whatever it is, we're gonna be better off. We're all kind of like one team, right? Because at the end of the day, we kind of care about this stuff, right? And we want to make sure that our data is safe. We serve our people, and I think Ray mentioned it. She wants to get paid. Yeah, you can still get paid. Be happy, do your thing, right? And everyone's follow that same trajectory, right? So I really appreciate you getting
Mhm.
these things done, and looking forward to the next one.
Excellent. Yeah, my stage is always open, and I love putting these conversations together. And I thought this was really timely, and it just kind of came up in our meeting, and you all just kind of jumped on. So thank you for that. And Frank, I'm going to put you on the spot because at some point, sooner or later, you're going to give us a software demo.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yes. No, no. Trust me, Dirce. I really want to show you what we're working on because a lot of it is like Felipe has kind of seen it, but a lot of it is
Hmm.
bringing it together
Yeah.
and making our lives a hell of a lot
Is it
easier. I'll
is it a
show you my
homegrown? Is it a homegrown app that you
yeah,
built from? Okay, awesome, awesome.
and it's based off of DoD requirements.
Yeah,
So
well, of
we took
course. What you do.
DoD requirements and then we're like, oh shit, CMMC's out here too, and we're kind of tying it all together,
Yeah.
So we're really proud of it. And I'll in the next couple of weeks, bro, I'm gonna send all of you guys a message, be like, all right, man, I need your
Hey,
feedback. And that's really
hey,
what I
and
need. 'Cause
if it's good, you can patent it and send it out and get someone else to buy it and or use it
no,
or
yeah,
license it,
that's the
right?
goal.
So
Yep,
yeah, hey,
and that's the goal, bro. Is like we're working on our patents right now and
here you
stuff like
go.
that.
See, I knew
Yeah,
it.
so
That's how it works.
yeah,
Awesome, man.
it just sucks, bro. It takes forever to do anything unless you
Yeah,
have like.
yeah,
Yeah, unless you're like one of the big guys, and
yeah,
these guys, I didn't know, I didn't realize that Raytheon and Lockheed, Martin, they spend like they're putting in like 7 patents a week,
yeah,
and
yeah,
each
yeah.
patent is like at least
I mean,
$50,000 to $150,000. I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, how
yeah,
the hell,
yeah,
But we'll get there. We'll compete with them one of these days. We're out to change the world,
for
so
sure.
we're gonna make everybody famous.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you.
All right. Well, you're all
All right,
welcome on
man.
my stage anytime. So with that, everybody, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All righty.
Bye.
Have a good one.